should President Obama win or lose, but Bill, you lose. What happens to middle America under that plan?
Yeah, well, this coming election, is going to be pretty much a decision between millionaires or Medicare, or millionaires in the middle class. And this is, if you look at the Ryan budget, Paul Ryan, the vice presidential nominee, just clarifies the whole discussion. As I mentioned in my remarks, just one provision of the Ryan budget will take away the child tax credit. That alone is going to force the families of 2 million children out of the middle class and into poverty. When they arrive in poverty, they're going to see that not only has the tax credit been cut, but that food stamps, Head Start, and Pell Grants, and everything that they depend on, that middle class people depend on, is their safety net for when times get rough and they fall out of the middle class. That's been eviscerated.
Middle class Americans, especially upper middle class Americans, have suffered greatly, being that home equity and home values were the biggest. That was everybody's savings account, At this point, though, do you feel that there are more Republicans converted to Democrats based on the last 10 years, and seeing how that affected them directly? Do you feel that do you see a bigger surge in what used to be upper middle class that are now maybe middle class, lower middle class, or, like, as you say, out of the middle class? Do you feel that way nationally? That there's
no question about that. That is what happened when home prices plummeted. A lot of people who were enjoying a very middle-class existence found themselves on subsistence. And that is just what happened. When you lose jobs, manufacturing jobs especially, to India or China, where do you lose them? That plunges people into a low to no income existence. And so when you're going through the kinds of transitions that we've gone through in this country, the fact of the matter is you will see people, as I know of one case with a law degree, but working in a low-income job simply to get the benefits. Because there's one thing about being a practicing attorney, you are a business person, you got to have health care, and you're trying to take care of family, and you do the calculations. Oftentimes, very highly professional people find themselves doing much lower income things in order to have health care and other kinds of benefits. That's why this Affordable Care Act is so important, because it allows people to make decisions based upon their professionalism rather than having to make them based upon whether or not you need health care or some other kind of benefit. So I think that what we're doing here with this president is very, very critical in order to get this country back on track.
Do you feel that the struggles that middle-class Americans face today are similar in scope, size, as the civil rights movement was back in the 60s? I mean, this is the struggle of our time, of our generation, where we're facing now. And there's a risk for middle-class Americans in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 50s, with children who are worried about what we're leaving behind the next generation, and what specifically does the Democratic Party stand for in Washington when considering that?
Well, Bill may remember that when we were having this debate inside our caucus, I made the statement more often than twice that I consider the healthcare reform as being the civil rights act of the 21st century. One of the reasons I said that is because in one of his speeches, Martin Luther King Jr. said that of all of the inequalities that exist in our society, he saw that the inequality in healthcare as being the most egregious. When you say to people that your status in life will depend upon before they get sick. That is something over which none of us have any control. And we know that healthcare was the number one reason that many families found themselves in bankruptcy. So I do consider this to be a very, very significant civil rights issue. Not that I would argue that healthcare is a civil right, but I will argue that healthcare is a fundamental right.
And it's also something that really traps a lot of people at the bottom economically. If you look, it's very interesting. If you look at other countries with advanced economies, countries in Europe, they have a much higher probability for people who start at the bottom to make it to the top than we do in the United States. This is very different than the line that you're hearing from the Republicans, but in fact, social mobility, as they call it, is lower in the United States. And a big part of that is that if you're born in the bottom 20% in the United States, you struggle with health care continuously. And a very large part of your budget goes to whatever health care you get. And so this makes it hard for you to invest in education and all the things that really help your family move upward over time. And so the loss of economic freedom coming from a lack of health care is one of the strongest single reasons why we supported the health care bill so strongly.
I know I speak for a lot of our readers, being a part of the community, being a small community newspaper, and one of the struggles that we all face, with healthcare and raising children, and is just the excessive fees, tax increases, the loss of jobs. Illinois has really been struck hard, with manufacturing jobs, as you said, leaving the state. What can be done at a federal level, to prevent those jobs from leaving?
One thing that bothers me a lot as a representative of Illinois is that the average citizen of Illinois pays more than $1,000 more in federal taxes than they get back in benefits from the federal government. So Illinois is what they call a donor state. And one of the things that's driving that, a big part, are the increased safety net spending in states that have a very low minimum wage. And so what we're seeing in Illinois is a competition. You may or may not agree with all this.
No, I don't.
Would say, that we're seeing industries compete for rock bottom wages and no organized labor in their state. And so that when that happens, and they win that competition, then they're paying poverty level wages, and then that increases safety net spending in those states, and they expect the taxpayers of Illinois to pick up a disproportionate share of that spending. And so that we have to make sure that it does not become a race to the bottom for things like minimum wage and health care benefits and frankly organized labor.